this kick that I've created. So let's have a listen to that now. Hi guys, I'm SKETI, welcome back to a new tutorial. This time we're going to look at how to make a kick but with different layered samples instead of in an operator, how I did the last time we looked at kick drums. So let's get to it. So what I've got here basically is a sine wave, a normal kick drum sample and a hi-hat. So if we listen to them separately, if we just loop around the sine wave. Now I created that sine wave in operator by just loading it up, creating a sine wave at pitch F1 and then freezing and flattening that track to create that sound. And then the body kick, which is just a kick drum sample and a hi-hat. So the next thing that I did is I copied this down, so I've got 3 different channels and I'm going to go through all the processing that I did on each one. So I copied that down and the first thing I did was change its fade amount. So I'm going to listen to it now, just mute that track. So that's what we should have now, basically, if you're wanting to duplicate this process. It's the same sine wave that I've created from before, but instead it's now got a fade out. Now if you're not using Ableton Live, there's different ways of doing this, but pretty much every DAW has this function of fading out within the region itself. And obviously fading in as well when we get to the body kick, which I will look at soon. So now that we've done that, is what I did for this one is I found that Complex Pro worked the best, and then with the, if I just open that explainer window again, with the show hide envelope box, open that up and then click on the semitones, transposition, yep, for some reason it already has, yeah, there's the point there. And then all I did basically is just draw some points in, make sure I'm right at the beginning. A point there, and a point there, and a point right at the end. And then this is basically, to taste, is just shaping the kick drum to exactly what I want it to sound like, or the sine wave, obviously. Because this is going to be the basis, the sort of sub of the kick drum that we're creating. But just to sort of speed the process up, this is what I did earlier. And as you can see, it starts at 48 semitones above the fundamental, goes down after a 16th note to plus 10 semitones above the fundamental, and then down to minus 5 semitones, and then all the way down, because I didn't really want this to have a tone, this kick drum, at all. I wanted it to, like sort of dubstep and breaks and drum and bass, it doesn't really have a tone like house music does in kick drums. So if we listen to it now by itself, so that's what it sounds like now compared to if I take that pitch fade off that I did at the beginning. And now it's, excuse me, it's turned into this. Cool. So that was the sine wave, just processing it with some pitch and a fade out. The next thing I had was a bit of frequency shifter, just to bring the tone down a little bit more. Instead of messing around too much with the transposition in here, I found that just by using the frequency shifter just to drag it down, minus 13.5 Hertz, made it sound a little bit more where I wanted it to be. Then a very, very small amount of saturation, like 5.56% on the dry wet with a soft clip on, using a hard curve, and then 1.71 decibels. This was just to give it a slight little bit more grit, nothing that's very audible, but just some more extra harmonic tones above that fundamental note. And then a lot of shaping is going to take place, obviously, with the EQ8. Got a high pass filter at 30 Hertz as I normally do, and then peaking at where the fundamental note is, which was around 62 Hertz. Another one in the 200 Hertz region just to give some of the body a little bit more of a boost, and then a low pass filter, right, really low, because all the top end frequencies are going to be replaced either by the body and the hi-hat. So if we listen to that now, I'm actually, yeah, it should be alright because I've got a glue compressor on the group. And then to finish it off, a glue compressor which is being pushed quite hard. Mine is 18.7 decibels on the threshold with a 10:1 ratio, and then pushed back up with makeup gain at about 8.25 decibels. And that actually makes it a little bit quieter, but when we glue all of this together in its own kick drum group, I'll start to bring that up with other processing. Now the next one, if we just solo it, is the body kick by itself, and that looks like, obviously, if we just drag that down to this channel, so that was the kick drum by itself. Just take the fade off. But then what I did, because I'm going to use the hi-hat for the transient of the kick, and obviously the pitch down in the sine wave. So this is really just to sort of fill out the body and the tail end of the kick with some more live sounding kick drum sound. So now you can basically grab any kick drum that you want, that you like the sort of body sound of it. You don't have to worry about the bottom end of it or the top end click, because that's going to be replaced by obviously the sine wave and the hi-hat. That's what that sounds like. A little bit too quiet at the moment. I'll just turn the glue compressor on for now so we can hear it more. So, obviously with a fade in and a fade out, and a glue compressor at the beginning, this is just there to give it a little bit more level, because I think if I look, yeah, just to sort of control some of the peaks. Then a saturator with an analog clip, very small dry wet percentage of 7.94%, and then 12 decibels of dry with the soft clip turned on. Now just to give it a little bit more body and loudness, bringing some of the harmonics that you're not really hearing there. That's what the saturator is really there for, just to sort of saturate all of those frequencies within the signal to bring them up a little bit more. And then the EQ8, which has got quite a high pass filter at about 215 Hertz, so obviously the sine wave is sitting there, and then the rest of this is obviously above a peak. Now what I usually say is around 500 Hertz you shouldn't really have any sound in a drum, but for this it's going to actually be taken away in the group stage. So a boost there, because I found some frequencies that I really liked when I started boosting there, and then another boost in the 7 kilohertz region as well. So compared to what it sounded like before and to now. Fantastic. And the next thing is the hi-hat, which obviously if we look at the original hi-hat sample, which is about, well, it's actually quite long, because I recorded it from, if we look from, if you go on, if you have Ableton Live 10.1 Drum Essentials Acoustic Arizona Kit Pack, which I really like that pack, so I just basically sampled down the hi-hat just by playing it, freezing and flattening that track, and then using the fade out tool on the region, made it very short. So if we listen to it now, which if we compare that to what it originally sounded like, which is here, obviously this is just to give that click basically, which the sine wave and the body kick don't really have. The next thing, a frequency shifter, push that up 60 Hertz, which I find quite a lot that using 60 Hertz lift in the frequency shifter is a nice thing if you wanted to pitch it up higher. I've found 60 Hertz is sort of like a magic spot, 60 and 100 Hertz as well. So it's not a massive amount of difference, it's just adding a little bit more top end frequencies and push the fundamental a little bit higher, which you can't really hear the fundamental in a hi-hat, but it sounded a bit nicer to me anyway. And then the EQ8 with a very high pass filter in consideration to the rest of them, 1.32 kilohertz. A boost at 10 kilohertz just to bring in some more of that top end, and then a low pass filter about 18 kilohertz just to get rid of any of the top end that I didn't want, which is going to be replaced by an actual hi-hat pattern when I show you the drum pattern later on. So that's all of that together. So if we listen to these drums now together, so all three of them playing. Now what I can do obviously now is start really shaping the mix, which I did with this. So minus 3.5 decibels on the hi-hat because it was a little bit too strong, the transient. I might bring this body down to about -2 as well. Nice one. And then in the group channel I've done some more processing just to glue all of this together. So the OTT, which I've shown before, 28% when I've shown you how to make a snare drumming operator and a kick drumming operator. Now, I soloed the low, and I pretty much kept these bands the same. I didn't change frequencies. So I soloed the low and then started messing around with this threshold and ratio delay, this display here, until I got enough boost that I wanted. Now I find with kicks, boosting the mids quite a lot allows a lot of the punch and the smack to hit quite hard. So as you can see, this is turned blue now, which means that it's being pushed quite a lot. And then the highs, Not as much, just to bring a little bit more top end back in. But if we listen to them soloed by themselves, so this is the low end, this is the mids, and then this is the highs. But obviously you're hearing it, the compression versus the wet compression versus the dry signal. So if we went obviously amount 100%, and then compare it back to the about 28%, I think it was. Quite different sounding. And then obviously without it, as you're going to hear, is we've done a lot of boosting in that mid end, but it's obviously it'll smack a lot harder in the mix. And then the EQ8, this is basically just to shape the kick drum in general. So a high pass filter at 30 Hz just to get rid of any bottom end that's not needed, because obviously you've got the your sub bass and your bass line that'll probably fill that in. A tiny boost in this sort of original area of where this sine wave is at, just to bring it a little bit more up. 200 Hz just to bring in that body from the body kick. And now back to what I said about the body kick, where I've done a lot of boosting there in that region, is I've now brought it down just to shape it more, so that 500 Hz region. So when you've got your bass lines and your main musical elements, they'll sit in that region, so they'll come through a little bit better. And then a boost at about 4.26 kilohertz for this kick. It worked in that region. For different kicks it wouldn't. Obviously this EQ is, you need to be using your ears to make sure it's sounding good to you rather than just what your eyes are telling you on the screen. And then a low pass filter to just get rid of any top end that I didn't want. So if we listen to that now. And then at the end, a glue compressor, which again, 10:1 ratio, threshold down quite low, and then with a lot of makeup gain. And then this time I changed the range slightly, so it wasn't swinging all the way to the right. This is to really add some power back into the kick drum, because it was lost a little bit with the compression that I did here, and then in some of the processing I did before. So yeah, that's basically, I've now created a kick drum just back to these 3 samples. And then obviously this is what the kick drum sounds like now, with all of that processing. And as always, it's a good idea to put it into the context of something else. So I put it into the context of a drum beat this time, instead of adding more music. So I've put a snare drum in and a couple of hi-hat loops, a bit of reverb, a little bit of processing on the hi-hats and snare, nothing special, but just mainly so to hear what a kick would sound like in a beat. This kick that I've created. So let's have a listen to that now. And then what I would do is basically just bounce this kick down by itself. I'll just go down to the original one. Obviously I could resample this, process it more, add in some different layers and keep going with it. So I've got a few different kicks that I could use in different tracks as well. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this tutorial. If you like what you're seeing here, please press like, subscribe, share, hit the notification icon as well, so obviously it gets into the YouTube recommendations more. Leave a comment below if you've got any recommendations for tutorials you'd like to see, or any questions about what I've shown here if you're unsure about a couple of things. But yeah, thanks guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi guys, SKETI here. Do you want to learn how to... Or how about... Or maybe even... Well, I'm now giving online one-to-one tuition. The lessons will be entirely centered around what you want to learn. We can cover such things as making drums, bass,
sound design, sidechaining, mixing, composition, music theory, mastering,
and much, much more. Maybe you just want to brush up on your production skills using Ableton Live or Logic, or whatever it is you want to learn. Get in touch on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube to find out more information. Bonus round. Every new student will get a free sample pack of their choice from my Exit Sounds sample label. So if this sounds good to you, and you want your tunes to sound less like, and more like, then get in touch to find out prices and book your first lesson now. See you soon.
Everybody jump up, come on!